This is taking. There we go. We're live. I was just about to say this is taking forever. What? Why isn't it connecting? Welcome back to another episode of Go FUD Yourself. It is Thursday, so as you can tell, Kiara is wearing her favorite band shirt because we are ripping around the globe to talk about crypto arms race, and this week we're calling it the Asia edition. We have so many things coming out of Asia that we want to talk about.
You know, if someone would just send me some merch, I wouldn't have to wear band t-shirts all the time.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Tashi for the merch again. Yeah, check them out. Borderland on Evmos, about to go live pretty quick. Super cool crew there. Yeah, we're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're on all the major places. So like, share, subscribe. Help us get the word out. Evie, Nikki, what's up? Happy Thursday. Kiara, what are we talking about today?
So usually for crypto arms race, I try to touch on each continent, but I realized late last night that we don't dive deep enough into some of these countries. I was like, why haven't I ever heard about crypto in Myanmar or Cambodia? We're not going to talk about Cambodia because crypto in Cambodia is a real bad time. If you want to talk about human trafficking and crypto, take a look at Cambodia's news. We're going to talk about some slightly less funny things. So we've got Singapore. We have one thing about Myanmar. We have Japan, which is kind of exciting. We often talk about China and Hong Kong, and we never talk about the remainder of what's going on. I chose to skip over Korea because pretty much all of the Korea news is Korea Blockchain Week, which totally makes sense, but it's really like news, especially if you were there.
We talked a lot about it last week, I believe, too. So
yeah, we've got the Philippines, we've got Taiwan, we have Thailand, and Nepal is doing crypto stuff. So whatever. So we're going on a little Asia tour. This is the Asian edition. We're going to talk a little bit about each country. It's going to be snappy because we only have our half hour. And then I will probably put some stuff out on LinkedIn that is a little bit more of a summary about each of these countries. So if you're interested in that, come check out whatever I publish on LinkedIn today and tomorrow.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think we don't need to keep everybody anticipating any longer.
Bated breath.
I know, it's so exciting. All right, let's freaking go.
No.
All right. Well, if you were wondering if we're a live show, now you know, because we do have technical difficulties all the time. But
like every day.
I can't get you back onto my headset now. Cool. Okay, so set up the first one while I fix my...
Okay, so first of all, you're probably like, Asia? Is Asia really that involved in crypto? What's going on? Why are we moving away from talking about China? Aren't they the ones part of BRICS who are going to really lead crypto in Asia? The answer is no. Chainalysis just came out, I think it was this week, with a new report that says 6 out of the top 10 countries with the highest crypto adoption are in Central, Southern Asia, and maybe Oceania, including India, Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia. So we have talked about Indonesia before. We talk about India pretty regularly. And then I didn't actually find a lot about Vietnam for today's news, but we are covering the Philippines today. But it's interesting to think that we are so, Euro-focused or America-focused. We believe that we're kind of the hub of onboarding, and we believe that we're going to solve all these problems when, like, Asia's doing it. They're just doing it without us. And that was kind of the focus of Korean Blockchain Week as well, right?
Yeah, it was just to highlight Asian adoption and to attract more participants to Asia. I mean, we've kind of known this for a long time. It's just been very difficult to navigate the Asian markets. Marketing is different. Partnerships are different. User acquisition is different. There's been a lot of flip-floppiness from Asian authorities over the last few years. But what's really exciting is we're seeing some of the major jurisdictions, Hong Kong, Singapore, Korea, Japan, et cetera, Philippines, KL in Malaysia. Like, there's quite a few places that have been reporting and now starting to regulate and allow crypto. So that's very exciting.
I think it's also cool to note, honestly, that 40% of the world's population qualify as lower middle income countries, and lower middle income countries are the ones that are leading the way in this, with the exception of in the top 5, the USA is in the top 5 of crypto adoption.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, it's worth noting that it's not just user numbers and proportion that
I
leads to the
know, but it's
success. No,
fascinating.
I know you know this, but I'm just reminding people just to take this with a grain of salt, because volumes and values of said users are not quite the same. All of that being said, this is, I think, exactly, it's highlighting exactly why we all started building. Well, not all of us, but a lot of us started building in the first place, and that was there's a crazy divide in terms of developed nations and access to financial products, and underdeveloped nations or developing nations and access to financial products. I'm speaking from a financial perspective, but I mean, it's the same thing with gaming, with culture, with NFTs and art and all of this stuff. There's a huge disparity between the Western world, so to speak, and developing world in terms of the ability to jump classes and the ability to better yourself if you want to with hard work. And this highlights that. That's why I think we're seeing a lot of this adoption in these emerging markets, because finally they have ways to transact, and finally they have ways to participate in finance where they otherwise couldn't. And so, although it's probably not as impactful in terms of like, whoa, revenue's going way up thanks to Asia and liquidity's going way up thanks to Asia, it is, but it's not like we woke up one day and we're like shocked.
Exactly.
But what is great is I think there's a lot of momentum, and it's highlighting that what we're doing matters.
So the other thing that's kind of interesting about touching on the Asian topic is that we as Westerners attribute a lot of Asian governments with power and control. And I mean, that's pretty natural considering the vast populations that they have, as opposed to our like tiny Canadian cities, you know? But Singapore is a really great way to start off talking about that, because they're having a little bit of back and forth within their own country. So they actually just voted in a new president, and that president is pretty anti-crypto. He's not 100% anti-crypto, but he says that crypto is really risky. And with that in mind, they issued a 9-year prohibition order against Three Arrows Capital. Is that right? But also they've introduced Zodiac custody, which is offering digital asset custody to financial institutions in Singapore. So they're both banning and having entrance. And it's, I don't know, it feels like a little bit of tug of war.
Yeah. So if you remember, we talked about this, I don't know if that was last week or if that was this week, but I mean, one of where this Tharman whatever came from is the monetary authority. And so he had a lot of responsibility over monetary policy. It's similar to the central bank in America, et cetera, and determines kind of how their money supply works and manages inflation. Anyways, all of this stuff to say that monetary policy in Singapore is important, just like it is in many other countries, because of fractional reserve banking and the ability to print money. All of this to say, he's not necessarily anti-crypto. I think he just approaches crypto through a different paradigm, and that is from the perspective of how it could negatively impact the government and monetary policy based on the current status quo. Anyways, all of this to say, I think I'm happy to see some of this, like Three Arrows. This to me is too little too late. Like we're a long ways out from Three Arrows now, and that shit was obnoxious. Like that was pure fraud, like malfeasance. Like there's just so much crap that happened there. I mean, I'm not an attorney or anything, but I'm not a big fan of Sue and Kyle, of course. So the fact that they're banned for 9 years, fine. I don't think they care too much. They're in Dubai. They raised money for a new centralized exchange. I don't think they're too worried about what Singapore has to say about them, but I guess we'll see. It's the fact that they've approved custody now in Singapore. You know, it's a bit of a yin and the yang. They're doing some enforcement and trying to clean things up a little bit. And the other side is they are trying to highlight a path to compliance and regulation. So I like that.
Yeah, not necessarily a bad thing, but important to note that there is that that power control versus freedom tug of war, right? That we're also experiencing. So I don't know, maybe that's a universal archetype that we should learn from. Japan, on the other hand, is like just doing well. So
how do you define just doing well?
Well, in terms of crypto, they're just super pro crypto, which I guess is why we don't hear about them in the news a lot. There's not a lot of controversy, which is kind of a positive way to look at it. I know that we touch on Japan occasionally, but we usually focus on China's Hong Kong. And we talk about how, you know, Hong Kong is competing with Berlin or with Austin or whoever to be this crypto hub. And there's also Osaka. So Osaka is the second largest city in Japan, I believe. And they have all kinds of things going for them. They've got a huge startup scene. They have a huge business scene, of course. They are offering quite a few Japan-based exchanges, Osaka Coin, Nippon, Blockchain Plaza, Kansei, Digital Crypto Hub Osaka, and more. They have a few universities, so they're doing a lot of programming there. It seems like they have the government on board. They have retailers using crypto payments. They have blockchain projects like sponsoring local events and that kind of thing. So Osaka seems to be maybe the overlooked crypto hub. So if you don't want to move to Slovenia, consider Japan. And then we have a couple of specific news items about things that are coming out in Japan. But
you sounded super Canadian there. Holy hell. I don't think I've heard you.
I'm excited. So I'm not masking my accent. Have you been to Japan? Do you like Osaka? Do you think that we're overlooking this possible crypto hub?
I like Japanese food a lot. I have not been to Osaka. But I mean, this kind of makes sense. If you look at the financial trajectory of Japan over the last couple of decades, there's been hyperinflation. There's been many, many issues with, of course, devaluation of the yen. But there's been many, many issues with their financial sector in the last little while. Tech sector, they had a big tech sector for the longest time, which they're aging. They have a population problem. The inverted triangle, kind of like we've talked about this before, but they have a lot of older people in Japan. They're not replacing their population. All of this to say, again, this kind of makes sense to me, right? You see some of these markets that have had challenging times in the recent decades economically, and they're the ones that are poised to benefit the most from this type of technology. So I think it's really good. I mean, it's nice to see Japan has been, and we've been talking about this for a while, one of the leaders in regulation, in the sense that they've been, fairly vocal. They've been taking relatively prudent steps in the right direction. So I'm a big fan. And Japan is just a good place to hang out, apparently, if you're
it's supposed to be fantastic. But the regulation is allowing for a lot of institutional players. So for example, MUFG, which is their largest bank, is actually working for an enterprise wallet solution for asset trust services. The idea here being that you don't have to pay crypto taxes on your unrealized payments if they're still in crypto, which is kind of an interesting way to do it. And they're also running like a focus group study group to explore the co-design of token allocations and vesting for institutional investors. So there's a lot of institutional play going on in Japan that we've maybe not been privy to.
Yeah, I struggle a little bit to understand what they're going to try to do with vesting and token claims. Like, I don't understand how you would regulate.
That's why they're investigating it? I mean,
I don't know. But it's interesting. I think obviously there's going to be a lot of growing pains, over the next certain number of years until this kind of becomes homogenous globally. But love to see it. Love to see jurisdictions leaning into it.
For sure. And we can't move on from Japan without just mentioning that Astar Network, which is Japanese, and Polygon Labs are introducing Astar Zero Knowledge EVM, which is supposed to be a layer 2 scale. Yeah.
I mean, the ZK EVM is essentially what Polygon's L2 has become. And it's pretty interesting if you understand rollups and how ZK works. It's a pretty cool technology. I'm not sure I understand how this partnership works. Do you have any clarity on whether it's they're just tapping into Polygon ZK EVM, or are they white labeling it for another L2 for Astar?
It's supposed to be another L2. And they're supposed to be working with super giant brands basically to be able to afford that and to create like a use case for it, including Toyota.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, we'll have to watch how this. I can't see any specifics on like how.
Yesterday we were talking about how Sony is launching their own blockchain. Also, we thought that might be GameFi, but maybe it's related to this actually.
I have no idea.
Wasn't that with Startail?
The only thing that I automatically think when I see this is another L2.
I know, but like Toyota's not going to play on Sol. Like.
Well, you never know. I mean, I'm surprised Polygon didn't just pay them for some partnership, because that seems to be what they've done. But anyways, it's good to see Polygon out there still grinding. I mean, for all the complaints I've had over the years of Polygon, they deserve some credit. They were way ahead of the curve in terms of trying to build L2s when no one was really even thinking about that yet. So good for them. The ZK EVM is really cool. They're seeing some good adoption, which is pretty exciting. So all in all, I think it's great.
So Japan is going the institutional route. We saw Singapore playing a little bit of tug of war.
Now we're going to the beach.
Thailand, their new prime minister is super pro crypto and has played in crypto a lot. And anyways, he's kind of like trying to introduce a CBDC via a national airdrop of 10,000 Thai baht, which is about $300 American, to every citizen above 16. And they'll be able to use it at local retailers. And I thought this was a really interesting way to launch a CBDC without calling it a CBDC, instead calling it a national token. Kind of interesting because they are also doing a lot of crackdowns on crypto scams and crypto exchanges, foreign exchanges. So I think this is a little bit of a ploy to have that national token, but
I think it's a bit of a bait and switch. Let's use some recent security issues and lack of regulatory clarity as the excuse, and we'll now just casually push the population into adopting and using this national token, which to anybody paying attention is a CBDC. I mean, I like that Thailand is trying to clean things up because it has been a hotbed for scams and so on.
Sure.
And I like to see that they're trying to find a way to make the space work, but I really struggle with CBDCs. Like I just think it. I know we talk about this all the time, but I think it is completely the antithesis of what the space is for. Why the space started, why it's, yeah, of course there's some efficiency gains in the technology and it opens the doors to a lot of new products and concepts, but the largest 0 to 1 involves fixing a lot of the problems of centralization in federal governments and corporations, obviously. And so this to me is the exact antithesis of that.
Well, while we're on CBDCs, Nepal has also started to explore their CBDC alongside the Nepal Rashtra Bank. They're in their super early stage. They say that they're in a research stage, but they also believe that they'll be able to issue a CBDC for cross-border, so probably institutional, within 2 years.
Whether I complain about it or not, I think we're going to see more and more of this.
You're going to see it.
Because the attraction to centralized power is too high. So, yeah. I mean, we're going to see this. I think where the rubber meets the road is, are we going to placate the situation and just accept it, or are we going to resist and find better ways and lobby our local governments? We'll have to see.
I know. I feel like Nepal doesn't really have a choice, though. One of the things that they're quoted as saying is, we are in the initial phase of the study. We are not behind, which is probably meaning that they're super behind their neighbors, India and China. And as far as I'm aware, Nepal hasn't joined BRICS. So Nepal is probably trying to make a play so that they can still participate in cross-border interactions as they're right between India and China. So,
yeah, we skipped over the...
It's fine.
Keep
going.
Okay.
There's a lot here still.
I know. We got a big day today. Holy crap.
Okay. The Philippines.
Philippines. Have you seen that?
The Philippines.
Have you seen that meme? Philippines? It's like, anyways. Never mind. Okay, go ahead. Philippines.
Yeah, do you want to keep going?
Totally screwed you up. No, I'm just passing it back to you. Throwing the ball back. Go ahead.
I don't know what you want from me.
Nothing.
Okay, the Philippines telco giant is working alongside Singapore. So maybe I should have popped this up earlier. But they're creating a Web3 platform for the Basketball World Cup, which is kind of interesting. Which is kind of like a resale case. And then they also have some new international and institutional use cases that we could talk about too, specifically with Ripple.
Yeah, it'll be another one that's going to pursue the CBDC, I'm sure, hence the partnership with Ripple. Good for Ripple, bad for the space, in my opinion. I mean, I'm surprised that they're pursuing a community collectible platform. It's essentially an NFT marketplace. I don't know why they're not just calling it that. And then we've seen a lot of enforcement.
Okay. So the reason they're not just calling it that is because they're using. Do you remember when you could geofence ads via SMS with Rogers?
Yeah.
Did you ever do that? Yeah. So they're basically doing that, but with all of this telecom with all of the users of this telecom, which is like 60 million people. So we're just going to see how many people they can like onboard.
To me, this just seems like a money grab.
Absolutely. But it's also an interesting, I don't know. I don't like, as you could tell from my episode with Christine this week, I don't like onboarding users in this type of sneaky caveat way. But it might onboard, up to 60 million new people to use NFTs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, they better make sure that they don't sell these NFTs to anybody from the US, because we've seen a lot of enforcement actions recently. But remittance.
This is the Ripple.
Yeah, so it sounds like they're really trying to move in. Ripple's trying to move into remittance and cross-border payments and all of that stuff. The easiest way to do that, of course, is with the CBDC. But in the meantime, Ripple's building and offering the rails on the XRP token. So again, I hate to say this and be super FUD on this, but I think this is just one step on the path to CBDC. Ideally not, but we'll have to wait and see. But good for Ripple. I mean, if it's going to be anybody, Ripple has stood up often and frequently and put their money where their mouth is for some of the core values of the space and not getting bullied. So I don't mind seeing this from Ripple personally.
Are you suddenly bullish on cross-border CBDCs? Did you change your mind just like mid-episode?
Zero bullish. I'm just trying not to be super funny. Maybe I have 1% bullish, and that's just Ripple's involved.
That's pretty decent. I could counter trade that.
But that actually means just go buy Ripple. Don't. Just kidding.
Don't. Not financial advice. Not legal advice. Don't do any of that.
No.
Or do. It's up to you. Okay, Taiwan, we're going to talk about Taiwan next, is also in kind of an interesting place where they are trying to be pro-crypto, but struggling with power and control, as per the constant back and forth that we see in all regulatory areas. But I kind of like the way that they're doing this. So they are they're not gamifying it, but they're like BuzzFeeding it. So the government actually came out and said that they're going to do 10 game-changing crypto guidelines for crypto providers. They haven't released them yet. They're supposed to come out later this month. But the idea is that they want to provide a lot more clarity in regulation. They've already allowed 24 different crypto platforms to register with them. They are trying to allow like external users to enter the crypto space, but they want to make sure that they aren't scaring people away. I don't think Taiwan's going to become a crypto hub, but I thought this was maybe an interesting way to do it, is just kind of like simplify for retail users, simplify for institutions. These are your guiding principles. It's kind of like 10 commandments for crypto in Taiwan. Yeah.
I'm actually a big fan of this, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, KYC, AML compliance, like that's table stakes for regulation, in my opinion, and not commingling customers' payment funds with deposit funds with treasury and operating accounts. Like this is all just like what should be obvious, I think. And I don't mind it as a starting point. I think it's great. Let's get the baseline of protections in. And then as the space expands and grows, when we have more evidence and experience, then we can adapt the laws to be more effective over time. I think trying to get it right on the first try is difficult, and often we over-regulate in that environment because we're trying to catch every edge case. And there's going to be a bunch anyways that we don't account for. So I like this. I think this is great. It's good to see out of Taiwan. I mean, they're in an interesting situation too, because they have to trade with a lot of their Asian counterparts. But who knows how geopolitics is going to go with China and the US. And so I think there's some political influence over them, pursuing this also to create some autonomy over China and some of the other
absolutely
countries in the region.
I also like the way they're going about this, where they allowed for kind of like voluntary compliance at first. So they got 24 of these crypto companies and exchanges to register with them. And then once that was successful and they found like a path forward, now they're looking at having more stringent regulations on being unregistered. And so now that they've had quite a few successes, they got people kind of like on board, they got companies on board, they provided them a path to compliance very quickly and easily. Now they're saying, okay, within the next year, we're actually going to start cracking down on unregistered exchanges. But you have all of these use cases as to how easy it is to become registered. We've given you quite a lot of support. I like that. I think that this is a better method than just.
Again, I've been saying this forever. Like, let's just get the path out there, have an example, have a bit of a roadmap, give people a little bit of time to come into compliance, and then start enforcing. Like that's the simplest way to do this, and then adapt as we learn more. But
it seems like Taiwan has done a pretty good job of that. So.
Well, let's fly over to Myanmar.
Okay, our last one. There. This one's a little bit tricky because so the rest of them have been like, oh, is there regulation? Are there new crypto exchanges? Is someone building a chain? Amazing. Myanmar's a little bit different because it's politically controversial, and this is maybe a war that we don't talk about as a war publicly in the Western world. But basically, there is a fight for democracy, and people are believing that crypto might be the answer to fuel the fight for democracy. And
it's essentially a civil war, as far as I understand, right?
It is a civil war, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what they're doing now is there were certain leaders that were ousted, and they're trying to create a development bank to regain control from the military and provide financial services to people. So they're trying to start a parallel financial economy, and one of the ways they're trying to facilitate that is to include Polygon and blockchain products and different things. So it's kind of interesting to see, but this is somewhat unique. You're right. It's kind of in the middle of conflict, how one side of said conflict is trying to use some of the freedoms in blockchain to build.
And it's a little bit tricky. So you're saying that they're going to set up a secondary financial system. And what's interesting about that is during their civil war is they are already seeing an influx of external fiat currencies. So there is a Myanmar currency that's called the kyat. And people weren't happy about it when Burma became Myanmar because basically they forewent all of the previous currencies. So some people are still using an older version of the currency, and some people are using a newer version of the currency. And then because they are near Thailand and Singapore, there is often fiat from there. And there's also USD that crosses hands for bribes and that kind of thing. So like they already have a varied amount of financial options, and now they have crypto.
Hey, the more the merrier. Hopefully they figure this out. Anytime there's civil conflict, it totally sucks because
it's been a long time. It's been like 15 years, hasn't it?
Normally you lean on your government and allies for protection. And in these cases, it's like your government is fighting itself. So it's an interesting dynamic. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of our time for today. So quick reminder, we're live.
Arms race.
It is Crypto Arms Race. We're going to fly home. We're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Like, share, subscribe, help us out. We don't commercialize this thing. We're just trying to do it as a service to the community and because it's fun. And it keeps us up on current events. So help us out. Bookmark us, all that shit. Anyways, we will be back tomorrow with FU Friday, one of my favorite days.
I think we're going to talk about the metaverse.
FU Metaverse. And FU Gensler somehow.
No, God.
Yeah, that's right. Come on. Hey, for anybody that's listening, if you want to send us a note and you want your FU to be read on the air, let us know. We're happy to, to do that and chat about it. And with that, I say to you, Kiara, today, go find yourself.
Go find yourself.
Bye.